All great love stories, all of them, must, by definition, end in tragedy. 100%.
Welcome to Salon Talks. I am Mary Elizabeth Williams, and get your tissues ready because today I've got Nicholas Sparks with me. He is the author of 24 novels. This is the 24th.
24th.
And how many of them were #1 bestsellers?
I think 19 or 20.
19 or 20. All the bestsellers. You know him from A Walk to Remember, The Notebook, Dear John, Message in a Bottle. 11 of his books have been turned into films. I think 4 of them now are in development. 4 more?
5.
5, sorry.
5.
And of course, earlier this year, The Notebook was adapted as a Broadway musical. You're a busy guy. And now, on top of everything else, his latest book is called Counting Miracles. Hi, Nicholas. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's just get right into this book.
Yeah,
let's talk about it. These characters.
The book.
The book.
Boom, right here.
The novel. This, you have said that you always want to challenge yourself and you never want to repeat yourself.
Right.
What's different about this one?
Well, of course, this one differs from something like, let's say, The Notebook or Message in a Bottle or Dear John, in that there's actually 2 stories going on. There's an A story and a B story. And of course, I tried to make the characters very different than characters that I've created before in the past. And of course, there's a fairly strong biblical allusion in this novel, which I had never done before.
I want to ask you about that and these characters because you are a man of faith. This feels different in that, yes, the faith is really very much front and center. There are Bible verses in it. There's clearly allegories. There's clearly parallels between the struggles of these characters and biblical stories.
Right.
Tell me about how you wove that together and what that means for this story.
Yeah, it's interesting, with that said, I wouldn't necessarily characterize this as a Christian book or a Jewish book, right? There's a character whose life largely follows the pattern established in Job, and it explores the question why bad things happen to people. And I certainly think that is an experience that most people can relate to, whether or not they believe. They look up and say, this too? I think I'm a little overwhelmed at the present time, but now my car got stolen, or now my best friend just got hit by a car. And you look up and say, how can all this be happening at once? And certainly, I think that's a very universal feeling, and I wanted to capture that universality of into every life a little rain must pour. And to do that, of course, I said, okay, the most well-known story about that is really the book of Job. So that's where the title came from. There's a line in the book of Job about how your life is filled with uncounted miracles. So this one I entitled Counting Miracles. That uncounted miracles line is from the book of Job, I think chapter 9. And
this is a book where you, like I said, you are really foregrounding your own experience of faith. You're very open about that in your work, in your charity work. How does that... we live in a very confusing and difficult and controversial and divisive time.
Yeah.
I want to know what faith means to you right now and what it means to be a Christian right now.
Sure. Okay, I will tell you. Here's it. I'm coming up on 60 years old here. Not quite there yet, but I'm coming up. I don't know, it was maybe 6 years ago, everyone asked you, hey, what's your New Year's resolution, right? And you might say, I'll lose some weight, or want to do this, or I'll travel more, reconnect with old friends, whatever it is. About 6 years ago, I said, I want to feel more inner peace. And I said, okay, how do you do that? So I spent a few years trying all sorts of things like mindfulness work, meditation, read Zen Buddhism stuff, did some yoga, did all sorts of different, listened to tapes or things like that. And what really resonated with me more than any of those was prayer. And it was a specific kind of prayer. Of course, I'm Christian. I was raised Catholic. And so, I do my traditional Catholic prayers. But it was prayers of gratitude for all of those people in my life who have helped shape me into the person I am today. Maybe they helped me. Maybe they said something to me that changed my life. I remember once, for instance, I had a manager. I was working as a waiter. I had 2 job offers. Do I take this one or this one? And this one would have had me out of town for 6 months out of the year. And I had a young child at the time. He said, well, there's no question. You take this one. Well, this led to pharmaceuticals, which led me to North Carolina, which then led me to this back porch where I began to imagine the story of the Notebook. And I'm like, just this little comment changed the course of my life. And I'm very grateful to that because I like my life. Or the coach who gave me a scholarship, or the runner who said, if you work at this, you can be good. And I find myself feeling very grateful for all of these people. And that leads to a gratitude with God and the life that I've led. And I feel very much at peace. So that's what it's done for me. And I can't say that prayer is going to work for everyone. Like I said, I tried mindfulness. I tried meditation. That was what worked for me.
It's you're reminding me of Annie Lamott's book, Help, Thanks, Wow.
Yeah,
the 3 types of prayer.
Yeah, right. And I think that's good. I think the research is pretty. Look, this is unbiased research. I think the research, and let's say by psychologists and sociologists, they do say that gratitude. If you really try to build a feeling of gratitude in your life, you're a happier person generally, and life is a little easier to bear even in the down times when you're feeling gratitude. And so it's a good thing. To be a Christian, okay, I'm a Christian, great, right? I certainly find beauty in any number of other religions as well, and if you're a Christian or if you're not, okay, great, do what works for you.
You found your lane.
Yeah.
When you talk about that life-swerving event of writing the Notebook,
yeah,
and getting that published, that was, you had written other things before, you'd written nonfiction before, you'd written things that hadn't
nothing
sold.
published. Sure.
This was the one. That set you on a particular path. And I wonder, you talk about what it meant for you kind of personally, but what has it meant for you as a writer? It did seem to create a certain kind of genre.
Sure.
That is now the Nicholas Sparks genre.
Sure. It's funny, I still hear people, so you'll probably find this as amusing as I do, right? I go to my books. I had a book signing yesterday. I asked, what's your favorite book? And so many people still say The Notebook, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? That means I've been going downhill for the last 25 years, right? I try not to think of it that way. But sure, it was a novel that spent a long time on the bestseller list in both hardcover and paperback, and then eventually became this iconic film, and now it's a musical. It's certainly altered the path of my life and established me in this very specific kind of genre that nobody else really writes in. And they're novels with romantic elements in them. You never quite know the ending, whether it's going to be happy or sad or bittersweet. Of course, it's set in North Carolina. But after that, part of that genre is also surprise. And you want a different story, and you want a different structure and different pacing, different voice, different perspective. So the novels have all varied dramatically from novel to novel, with the exception of, there's some romantic elements in there. And it's set in North Carolina.
Right, you've got and I've heard you talk about that too. There are 3 things that are always going to be in a Nicholas Sparks novel, and then after that?
After that, it can be anything. And Counting Miracles would be a perfect example of that.
When you talk about the way that your career has gone in those interesting directions, your origin story with the Notebook is also really interesting. It was rescued from the slush pile.
Pretty
it was
much.
Based, inspired by a story from your own extended family life. Do you think a novel like that could have that kind of rescue story now, given how different the industry is?
Sure, sure. I'm really glad I am where I am right now, because I think part of what's making books break out, whether we're talking Colleen Hoover or Kristen Hanna, it's a lot of online social media buzz, and you either catch a wave by luck or you create your own wave. And with that said, when I first started, it was difficult too. Agents, were rejecting 99% of new clients, and then even when you got an agent, there was no guarantee you'd get a publisher. And then let's say you did both, well, there was no guarantee that the novel would sell out of the store. So I think it's difficult no matter what era you're in to start, and it's certainly different now than it was. But I caught a few breaks early on, and here I am today.
Still cranking it out, still at a pace that would leave most people breathless.
Yeah, and it's strange. I think I have to pick it up next year for a variety of other reasons that I can't really talk about. But I'm like, oh gosh, I think I have to do extra writing next year. Probably work on not just one story at a time, but 2, possibly even 3. And that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's going to keep you busy.
Yes.
I also want to ask about this element that, of course, when you say the name Nicholas Sparks, if I said word association Nicholas Sparks, what do you think people would say? Because I know what I think.
Well, I know it depends on
Give me a word. Give me one word.
Quality.
I like that. I would also say crying.
Crying.
I would say crying.
And I'd say surprising.
Surprising. I want to talk about the crying.
Sure.
People come to you they must come to you every day and say, Nicholas, why did you make me cry like that?
Yeah.
Nicholas, why did you make me feel these things?
Right.
You make people cry, Nicholas, and they love it. How does that make you feel?
I think it's great. I do. Right. Hey, look, Romeo and Juliet, that's probably Shakespeare's most well-known play. More people can recite the plot of Romeo and Juliet than they can, let's say, The Merchant of Venice. Okay. And that's pretty, you want to talk about a tragic play, right? When you look back at Hemingway, you make a case that A Farewell to Arms was his most popular, is his most well-known book. You look, hey, well, what's a great movie from, let's say the 40s and 50s? Casablanca is going to pop up on that list. And it's the same type of thing. It's a story with romantic element that, a couple of characters in there that you can very much relate to, and the ending is in doubt. There's always this curiosity as to whether the characters will get together, and there's no guarantee that they will.
What do you think that is, that we seek that? You obviously seek it. You just rattled off some things that I'm sure are among your favorites and your inspirations. We want to feel that sadness. We want to cry. Sure. What?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that, so let's start with one. All great love stories, all of them, must, by definition, end in tragedy. 100%. In real life, in your life, whether it's a pet, your child, a spouse, a sister, parents. And the greater the love, the more tragic the loss. Because no one lives forever. Every great love story comes to an end. You might say, but what about in the Notebook movie where they died at the same time? Aha. You're like, well, they left behind children. And those children weren't happy. They were brokenhearted. They were sad when Noah and Allie were gone. So love and tragedy go hand in hand. So that's part of it. If you're going to write about great love, and make it real, you can't have one without the other. That's part one. Part two is just probably a personal preference of mine, and it kind of goes to the genre in which I work. What you're trying to do is to evoke genuine emotion, and what is the purpose of my genre? It's to make you feel as if you've led a mini life between the pages. That's different than, let's say, a horror novel where your purpose is to scare the reader, or a thriller novel, you're supposed to thrill, or an adventure novel, you get lost in the adventure, or a mystery. It's a whodunit. Let's figure this mystery or this crime out. The purpose of my novels is to move you through all of the emotions of life so that you feel like you've led a mini life between the pages. And if you ignore one of the major emotions of life, i.e. sadness, it doesn't feel real. It feels like a fantasy. There's a room for fantastic or fantasy-based literature. Cinderella, for example. There is room for that, and they can be memorable stories, but I prefer novels that move you through a variety of emotions and make you feel. They just tend to be more memorable to me.
And Cinderella is also a story about grief.
Sure.
In having that kind of perspective, being able to sit here next to me and say, all love ends in tragedy.
Isn't that so sad?
Nicholas, that's pretty dark.
It's true, though.
It's really dark. I want to know then, how does that guide you in your own personal life when you're out there dating, when you're talking to your kids about their relationships? I mean, if I said to my daughters, all love ends in tragedy, I don't know how they'd feel about that.
Well, number one, they should know because it's true. But number two, to me, what that means is to enjoy the moments that you have, to make the most of them, to find reasons to be grateful, to find reasons to enjoy the company. I have children, right? And they're growing older. Fortunately, none of them have passed away. But look, they're beginning to lead their own lives. They're having their own children. They're not here in the house. They're there. It's visits are more sporadic. That is the ending of a specific kind of relationship. I can choose to be sad about that I don't see them as much, or I can find ways to be grateful for the time that I do spend with them, or for the pride that I feel. And I just kind of wire my life that way. And I think most people do, because if we just caught up in if we get caught up in catastrophizing, that leads to a very miserable life. Nonetheless, no one lives forever. All love stories end in tragedy.
Okay, I'm gonna reflect on that and probably cry a little more, Nicholas.
No, it makes you, since it will, you enjoy what you have now even more.
But I can also enjoy the crying. People clearly enjoy the crying because they pay you money to cry about these stories.
Sure.
Nicholas. You have made a living in making people cry. Clearly, we all want it. We want to feel those things and not run away from them. And speaking of that, you've had 11 of your novels turned into movies.
Yeah.
That changes your relationship with your novel writing. I want to know how that, now that you are established as also a cinematic brand, what does that do for you as you're thinking of your novels?
It's really interesting. That's a very good question. It's very intuitive. Thank you. It's interesting. Most of that, the work of thinking about film or the possibility of film takes place before I start a novel. And so many stories or story ideas or story elements are rejected because they don't feel original enough to me. And now you're like, well, because I've not only read it, let's say, in a book, but I've also, let's say, saw it in a film or I saw it on television. A real easy way to understand that is I would never write a love story based on the Titanic. You're like, why? There's not been a book. You're like, yeah, but there's a pretty big movie about that, right? There's a pretty big movie, so it wouldn't be original. So you're going through an idea and you're like, well, what if this or what if that? And you're like, okay, I don't really remember a book like that, but oh gosh, that was just a series on Apple, or oh my gosh, there was a movie about that, or oh my gosh, there was this other thing about, a long running series. You're like, it doesn't pass the originality test. So I filter things through originality for novels and films and television. So now you come up with the idea. Okay, now I'm ready to start writing. At that point, I do not think about the film at all. I just try to write the best novel I can. Now I've finished with the novel. Okay, now it might be being turned into a film. I only think about the film. I say, oh, okay, these things worked in the book, but they won't work in the film, so let's remove those and let's change some things up. And I'm perfectly willing to do that. So that's how I do it. It's all up front.
Okay, as someone who's had 11, you say, #1 bestsellers.
No, 19.
19. I'm sorry,
11
19,
movies.
11 movies, 19 #1 bestsellers, Nicholas. You are, I think, by any stretch, a successful person. I want to know, with that level of success, what do you consider your disappointments? What are the moments in your life where you feel like, wow, I really wanted that to turn out different?
Yeah, growing up, I loved track and field, right? I had a dream of going to the Olympics and winning an Olympic medal. And it's probably the biggest dream I ever had. Never made it, right? I never made it. I had a pretty successful track career, and it's how I got through college and, had a successful college career, but it could have been more successful. There's a dream that I just didn't do. And it's still, every time I watch the Olympics, I'm like, man, I could have been somebody, right? If the genetic cards, for instance, would have fallen more in my favor. So I think every life is filled with disappointment. You raise kids and you look back and say, hey, what would have happened if I'd done this? What would have happened if I'd done that? There's a disappointment, right? Yeah, I was raised Catholic, right? I'm divorced now, and there's some feeling of regret or disappointment that marriage didn't work out. I think everyone, disappointment and regret are just part of everyone's life, and I do tell my kids that challenge is part of everyone's life. I went on safari once, and I wanted to see the lions of the Sabi Sands. And people can go on YouTube and see this. But it was this pack of 6 lions, and they end up taking over this massive territory. And they killed everything. And eventually there was just one lion left because all of his brothers finally had been killed off. And so he's the leader. He's the most powerful lion in Africa, you could say. And I took a photograph from the distance of his face. And then, of course, I zoomed it up. It is just covered in scars, hoofs that hit him or fights in the past or this and that. And I show that to my kids. I've actually given my kids that photograph. And I say, look, this is the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk of the lion world. He is the king of all the lions. This guy makes Simba and Mufasa look like nobodies. And look how hard life is for him. Life is tough, whether you're successful or not successful. And navigating the challenges, the disappointments of life is pretty much what it means to live.
Okay, one more question. I love that, by the way. I don't know if I'm ever going to actually find a lion to illustrate that for me, but you can show me the photo.
I will.
You are a busy guy. We've talked about this. You're setting challenges for yourself all the time. What's your next big challenge, the bar that you've now next set for yourself?
Well, I think it would be probably coming up on next year, the fact that I have to do a couple of stories, including one, and I can't really talk about it, so it's going to be very vague, something that I generally don't do, but now I have to do it. And so there's a curiosity. That's going to be a challenge because it's not something I usually do. And it's a different writing than, let's say, the novels that I'm known for. So I have to do that. Plus I'm working on a novel that's particularly difficult for other reasons. And then I have to do this third thing. So I think that's what motivates me, is to say, hey, whether I can not only keep going, because keeping going, that's easy, but can I surprise myself? Can I write a novel that I think is better than anything I've done before? And I still, before I'm starting or conceiving a novel, I say, my goal is to write the one. I mean, this is the one. I've done it, and every reader says, this is it. And sure, it does. I'm still searching for that one, and the attempt to try and do that is what motivates me, because it's a high challenge, and I might never, ever get there. But if you're not kind of chasing a dream, why are we doing it?
All right, keep chasing it. And you're going to keep chasing dreams, and you led me to the perfect segue. Counting Miracles.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Future #1 bestseller, Nicholas Sparks, Counting Miracles. Thank you so much, Nicholas. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for watching Salon Talks. If you had a good time, why not subscribe right over here so you can get more conversations with your favorite artists, actors, directors, writers, comedians, musicians, politicians, everybody you love, and I love too. And while you're here, why not watch another video right now?